Hey, so this is gonna be an informal video. I'm just gonna be talking about my own life, kind of a audio journal or whatever. So in this, I'm gonna be talking about traumatic things like rape and manipulation and so on. So if you don't want to hear about that, I suggest you click away. You have been warned. So for this, I'm gonna have to go over some kind of background information leading up to things. Uh, in 2018, or roughly around there, I think, I ended up making friends with a girl. She was in one of my classes in college, and she and I hit it off really well. Like, we just kind of clicked. She was a lot more outspoken than I was, like, with her eccentricities, I guess I'll call them. But I don't know. I guess I found that comforting or inviting. So we became friends and we exchanged numbers eventually. And she told me that there was this guy in one of her other classes that she had feelings for. Like, she talked about him a couple of times to me, but she was really, I don't know how to word it. She was really excited whenever she talked about him. Like, she clearly did seem really interested in him. And so I encouraged her. I was like, yeah, if you really feel that way, you should give it a chance. You'll never know if it'll work or not if you don't try. And so she approached him and asked his number and asked to go out sometime and whatever. That all went well. A lot happened, but they ended up engaged. They were happy together. They liked each other. And this friend of mine, she told me that there was a guy who had feelings for her that was a friend of theirs, and I don't know if she was friends with her first. I think so. If the guy was, I mean, sorry. Anyway, so she asked me to date him so that he would be less focused on her, I guess. I told her from the beginning that I wasn't interested in him. He was not my type. I found him repulsive, honestly. Like, his personality was very crass, and he was always pushing boundaries with people and throwing, like, small tantrums here and there, verbally, or pouting. Just not anything that would be appealing to me, really. But she made me feel like this would be, like, a really big favor to her, and she would be really grateful and whatever, like, because his attention was too much, and he was, like, swearing up and down that they were soulmates. So I was reluctant and didn't really want to, but I agreed. I said, okay, I will go on a date with him. I will distract him from you, I guess. And as you can imagine, that opened the door for some unpleasant experiences. I made it pretty clear from the beginning that I was not going to date him seriously. I told that to him as well. That we were just hanging out. And so we started going on dates. But with every single date that we went on, he pushed the boundaries further and further, as would seem obvious now, but I was pretty naive. I was only 21 at the time, like still figuring out life and everything and what I wanted. He was very forceful about doing things his way. Um, he had to open the door for me because he was pretending to be the gentleman type and just typical crap like that. But he would push for physical contact even though I would tell him flatly that I wasn't comfortable with it. He would even do so without permission. I remember one of the worst times we went to a park near a university and he got really handsy with me, and I had told him no, that I wasn't interested in making out, but at this point I felt like I had to go along with it. Like I had no choice, I felt like. And I remember him slamming me against a gazebo pole and being very rough with me and forceful. Like, I'm pretty sure I even pushed back a few times and he didn't stop right away. Like, it took him a while to actually stop. And I even was like, hey, I don't feel comfortable doing this here out in the open. And he didn't care. I didn't feel safe with him at all. And I didn't feel like he would listen to anything that I asked either. But I remember when I got back home that night from that incident, I had bruises on my chest. My lip was bruised. I think I had bruises on my arms as well. And he had tried to go all the way with me, but I had been pretty firm about that because I was scared and didn't want to be seen there either. Mind you, this happened near a religious school that is known for being very outspokenly against intimacy before marriage. So the whole experience just left me feeling disgusting. Sorry. I get chest pain when I think about it and get physically ill thinking about this man. Another time, it was further along in our dating because I had stayed dating him even though I didn't want to. I talked to my friend who pushed me to date him multiple times, being like, hey, I'm not comfortable with him. I don't like him. He is getting way too emotionally attached to me, and I don't want to keep dating him. But she would just keep begging me to keep dating him, be like, oh, well, can you just, stick with it for a little while longer? Can you just date him for, a month or more or whatever? And would make me feel trapped, if I didn't do this, I was a bad friend. And, without me, she would be in danger of him, returning to obsessing over her or whatever. She made that pretty abundantly clear in her wording. Not that I can remember the exact words. Another time, he coerced me into going on a trip with him. Just the two of us for, I think, 2 days, 3 days, something like that. But it was a trip out of state, and I didn't like at this point in time staying home either, like, because I wasn't really living in a permanent location, if that makes sense. I was technically like couch surfing at the time. So I don't know. For whatever reason, I decided to agree, and I won't go into details because there's not all that much that I remember of it, except that he convinced me to get naked with him, and obviously that led to him doing a lot of touching, and he tried to push for more, but I was dealing with feminine issues, I'll say, so I firmly refused, obviously. But I got home from that trip with his marks on my skin and his scent on me as well, and it just made me feel sick. I remember scrubbing myself off. I'm pretty sure I did that the time at the park as well. Just, I felt nauseous with his scent, and I still do if I remember what he smells like, because it happens sometimes. I don't know. I guess I was a naive kid at the time, and I was stuck. I felt like I had no choice. I felt like I had to go along with what he wanted because he was like twice my size, both physically and like height and weight wise. He was bigger than me. And my friend, just her and her husband, because she did marry him, they just kept pushing me to keep spending time with him, to keep quote unquote giving him a chance and whatever, just because they wanted to not have to deal with him or something. I felt like I was their sacrifice, like an offering to him to placate him, basically. I remember at the time I would go and spend time with my friend and her whole group of people, like her fiance and this guy, as well as a couple of their other friends. And we would play D&D together, and I don't know why, like, little things always bothered me, but I couldn't really put two and two together at the time of why it bothered me. Like, even during D&D, they would always try to force my character, if I had a female character, to date that other guy's character, and like they would put that other guy in like suggestive situations, I guess, to once again placate him or like stroke his ego or something. I don't know. But I always felt like an outsider. Like they would smile and chat with me and whatever, but I never really felt like, I don't know. I never really felt connected to them or welcome in a way. I always felt like just, I don't know. I would come home after playing D&D with them and just feel confused and empty and lost, which doesn't really make sense because after spending 3 hours or 5 hours, whatever it might be, with a group of supposed close friends, you'd think you'd feel happier, but I always came home after hanging out with them feeling depressed or just emotionless, and just I never felt happy or good after spending time with them. even just like little things, like my character would fight really hard to accomplish a goal, and once they accomplished that goal, the credit would be given to one of the other players, which might not sound like a big deal, but it adds up if it's constant like that, like it was. So it just made it so D&D, which is supposed to be an escape, was not an escape from that man, and it was not an escape from my disappointing life, because even in the game, it was disappointing. Like, there was no joy that came from it. But I stuck with it because they were my only friends, really, at the time that I spent time with. Like, my high school friends, I wasn't really around them at the time. But I can't remember now the order of things, the order of events, because of trauma and the fact that my brain tries to protect me by suppressing things. But I think it was before the incident, the last one with him, that I attempted suicide. It was after playing D&D with them again, and I came home just feeling numb, like nothing mattered, and I did something really stupid, and I attempted to take my life because I felt like nothing really mattered anyway. Like, even the friends who claimed to be my friends didn't seem to really care about me. That man just wanted me for my body, it felt like, and if anything, it felt more like he wanted to possess me than he really cared about me. And my high school friends weren't really involved much at the time, and I was isolated from my whole family because of foster care, and so I just tried to kill myself because it didn't feel like anyone would care, which was obviously very, very wrong. I remember how upset I was at the time, but that's maybe something to go into on a later day, not right now. But whether that suicide attempt came before or after this, I don't remember. But it became sort of a habit that every so often I would go and, after D&D, spend time with this guy at his house. His parents' house. That's why I felt like it wasn't as bad of a deal, because his parents were there. They were home. And we would watch anime or YouTube together. And it was better than going back to where I was staying, where I knew the people I was staying with would be in bed anyway, so I would just be there alone. And I couldn't stand that. I have a really hard time being alone. And it was on one of the times that I agreed to go to his house for a little bit to watch anime, that we were watching anime. Nothing was unusual. It was just basically same old, same old. We were watching something, and suddenly he gets handsy and forceful, and he took all my clothes off without asking and immediately started to violate me, I'll say, in those words. And asked after starting to do things to me if it was okay, and I was scared, and he was bigger than me. He was literally on top of me, so there was nothing I could do anyway. So I just nodded because I didn't want to get hurt, and I felt like I had no way out of it. And I just did whatever he told me to, like a doll, and just laid there. I remember kind of going out of body, like I was seeing everything from above myself, which I'm pretty familiar with since I dissociate a lot. And I just let it happen because what else am I supposed to do? I couldn't get away if I didn't. There was literally nothing I could do to get away. He had driven me to a town like a half hour or more from where I was staying. I don't drive, I don't have a car, I don't have a license. It was like midnight or something at that time. There was literally nothing I could do. And after he did everything that he had wanted to do to me, I remember it was like 3 in the morning or something on a Sunday. And he told me that I had to go to church with him because he was a Mormon guy, and despite what he had just done to me, he wanted to keep up appearances, I guess, and pretend to be the good Molly Mormon boy, or whatever the male equivalent is. But I demanded that he take me to the store and get Plan B because I just felt so sick. I remember shaking in the car when he was taking me to the Walmart or CVS or wherever it was, I don't remember. Because I was terrified at the thought of having to bear that man's child and be stuck connected to that bastard for the rest of my life. He bickered and complained and tried to fight against me getting Plan B because I know he wanted me to get pregnant. Like, I didn't think about getting Plan B until he mentioned how he would be so happy if I got pregnant. And then after I demanded the Plan B, he was like, oh, well, I didn't do that inside, so it's fine. And I was like, I don't fucking care. And after that happened, I remember I think I blocked him, and I told my supposed friend and her husband that I wanted nothing to do with him, which they were convinced that it was consensual because that's what he told them. Because of course he did. And I remember that I think a week later, or maybe a month more, I don't remember, because it took me a while to come to terms with what actually happened. I felt guilty, like it was my fault for a while, because I had agreed to go to his house, even though I knew it was risky to go to a young, unmarried man's house, even though his parents were there. And I felt like, well, maybe if I had done this or that, or maybe if I hadn't agreed to date him because my friend told me to, that none of this would have happened, so therefore it's my fault. Which, of course, is absurd. But I remember, like, a month later that I told my friend's fiance or husband, whatever he was at the time, I told him what happened. I told him in great detail when he was driving me home from D&D because they encouraged me to keep playing. And I remember sobbing my eyes out when I told him about it. And he seemed very sincere about being sorry for what happened. And he claimed that he would talk to him and whatever. But after talking to him, he acted like that conversation never happened. Like, he never told his wife, my friend. And then they, cornered me when I refused to talk to him at D&D. And were like, why aren't you talking to him? Aren't you guys dating? You shouldn't just, cut him off out of nowhere. You should at least try to talk things out and whatever. A bunch of bullshit trying to convince me to keep dating him because he swears you're his soulmate and blah blah blah. And he's so depressed. Don't you feel bad for him at all? And whatever. And I tried up until 2021 over and over to convince them that what he did was rape. I even researched the laws myself because when I was doubting it, I felt like I needed to look it up and know for sure that I wasn't just trying to use wishful thinking or whatever. According to American law, he raped me. And despite having told them and tried to convince them of what happened, that I was telling the truth, they swore up and down that one of my other friends, one of my high school friends, was manipulating me and that I was being brainwashed to believe something had happened that hadn't. And all this shit. Until I finally was like, if you're not gonna believe me, then I don't want to be friends with you anymore. It hurts too much for someone you care about to call you a liar and to act like you who've been through something horrible, who's a victim, is just, I don't know. In any case, I remember the last conversation I had with those two. Her husband said, "Good luck in therapy," in a very spiteful way, and they blocked me. However, unfortunately, that old friend of mine still follows my YouTube, my main page. And if she sees this, fuck you. You know who you are. Stop following my page. Block me, whatever the fuck you want to do. You have no right to my story. And you have no right to my pain. I hope you suffer for what you did to me. And I hope he does too, and your husband. But this is my truth, and I have a right to speak it. And despite the fact that even the fucking police officer I finally reported it to last year, or the year before, I don't remember, asked if I think he deserves to go to jail, or if basically I think his life should be ruined, he's supposedly this bright young man who has a hopeful future. He's fucking not. He's a low-class worker. He's a fat ass. He's a rapist. Normally I wouldn't attack people for their weight, but no, I don't care about him being polite to him. I hope he burns. Especially for forcing me to go to church with him right after doing those horrible things to me. Anyway, this was a heavy topic, and I don't know if I covered everything I was going to or not. But I think I'm done talking about it for now. That man does not have a brighter future than me. And you know what? If he rapes another girl, I hope he gets castrated. Or something worse, because he would deserve it. He's a horrible person for what he did. It is inexcusable, because he took some of my future away from me. He took my hope, and he took my innocence, and that violation that he did to me will probably stick with me my whole life. He ruined my life. So the least that I can hope for is that someone ruins his. That's all.